Well, let's go to the female panel. As I mentioned last week, Tanya Plibersek can't be with us. In her stead, we have the lady who was elected to represent the Labor Party in South Australia, the seat of Kingston, at 29 years of age in 2007, Amanda Rishworth. She's the Shadow Minister for Early Childhood Education and Development and the Shadow Minister for Youth. She's been a volunteer swimming instructor and a surf lifesaver. She's got a Bachelor of Psychology degree with honours from Flinders University and a Master's degree in Psychology from Adelaide University. She's got a husband, Tim, who most probably faces a psychological examination of everything he says, and she's got two little boys, Percy and Oscar. I might add the electorate of Kingston is named after a former Premier of South Australia, Charles Kingston, one of the founders of Federation. And, of course, Senator Amanda Stoker, the very gifted Queensland Senator, from a humble background to remarkable achievements in scholarship. So welcome to you both. If I could just ask you, I don't want to dwell on this issue, but a comment on the Berejiklian affair. Can we take South Australia's Amanda first? Amanda.
Well, look, it's a pretty messy kind of situation, and of course what you've had is a lot of speculation. Look, for Gladys Berejiklian, her private life is her private life, and I wouldn't want to go speculating about that, but there's clearly a process to go through here. There'll be evidence, and hopefully that will be tested properly, and that the process needs to just take its course.
OK, I agree. The process Amanda Stoker.
Look, I think it's important to note that while the admissions made today by Mr Maguire are apparently quite damning, the evidence seems to corroborate and support everything that's been said by Premier Berejiklian so far, demonstrating that she's been honest with the public and honest with the ICAC hearing. It's also really important, I think, that we don't allow this process to distract from or besmirch the really very good job she is doing, I would say best in the country of all the state premiers, of managing, keeping the economy as open as is possible and allowing as much freedom as is possible in the context of COVID-19.
Well, let me just ask you this. I mean, the Liberal Party have always claimed the higher ground on corruption, and they've taunted Labor over corrupt ghosts of the past. Amanda Rishworth, what does this mean, do you think, for the Liberal Party?
Well, look, I think there's been their fair share of accusations as well, but I think obviously as the process goes past, there'll be a question in the public's mind about whether there can still be trust in politics. And I think that's a really worrying situation when people are questioning trust. I mean, I don't want to make this a partisan thing, but I think as politicians we have to absolutely uphold the public's trust. And I think there is, you know, a real really obligation on all of us, really, to do that.
Good on you. Well done. Great answer. Amanda Stoker, for a long time the Labor brand's been identified with dodgy deals and corruption. Is this Maguire-Berejiklian stuff an electoral gift to Labor?
Well, we've got till 2023 to see how that plays out in New South Wales. There's a fair way to go before we're facing that. But more electorally relevant is to look at the more recent and more front of mind, for me at least, being in Queensland, conduct of the Queensland Labor Party, where we've had Labor here doing deals to change the electoral funding laws to exclude the people who don't support them while making it possible for unions to donate ever more, rigging signage laws so that their people can have plenty of signs but those who are more conservative can't. They've changed the advertising laws so that they can divert public taxpayer funding to applying it to their election or hopefully for them re-election campaign. And they've been doing it all while refusing to have a budget. Well, that's dodgy if I've ever seen it.
But I just want to ask you both. I mean, this Maguire fellow fancy bringing Chinese Communist Party members into the New South Wales State Parliament, reportedly charging them to meet Barry O'Farrell. They're from the United Front, a network controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Just a quick one from you both. Amanda Rishworth.
Well, look, I think foreign influence is something we must tackle as a country and as a parliament, and that's something we need to really tackle. And that's where I think foreign donations need to be banned in this country. They should be banned, and I think that's critically important. But we've got to look at other foreign influences and make sure that we have a squeaky clean electoral system.
Yeah, 100% correct. I know Amanda thinks that, so I won't even bother to ask you, Amanda. I wanted to ask you firstly about Anthony Albanese wanting to increase the subsidy per dollar that families spend on childcare from 85 cents to 90 cents, and households earning below $530,000 would receive a subsidy. What do you say to people with no children who may well be subsidising the career ambitions of well-off parents? Amanda Stoker.
Well, I think most people in the community can get behind the idea that providing some help for childcare for single parent or lower socioeconomic households is a valuable thing to do. But when we're talking about households that have incomes that are $400,000 and over, it really is a bit of a joke. It's not right to be providing enormous subsidies in those circumstances. And when we have evidence that the Morrison government's current scheme, the childcare subsidy, is getting the balance right between helping those families that truly need it to be able to earn a living and making sure that those who can pay their own way, there's no demonstrated need for this proposal.
Well, let's go to Amanda, because she's qualified in this area too. Look, Amanda, I'm sure this is good and right for children in single-parent or lower socioeconomic households, but surely for a household of 400,000, as Amanda says, it's just glorified child mining, isn't it? Can we afford this?
It's not at all. And KPMG and the Grattan Institute have recently both released reports. What Labor is doing is we are removing a disincentive for women to go to work. At the moment, what those two studies showed, that for a woman to go back to work on the 4th or the 5th day, depending on their income, they actually have to, in some cases, pay to go to work, or they get 5 cents in the dollar when they turn up to work. So what those reports have said is if you remove this disincentive, you actually grow the economy and you actually, that's better for everyone.
But Amanda, the greatest growth in female employment in this country, the greatest growth was in the 70s when there was none of this stuff. None of this stuff.
Well, if you have a look at the OECD figures, we trail well below full-time work in the OECD. The OECD average is about 37%. We're trailing at about 23%.
But now, look, you're a mother. You're both mothers. I've read books on all this stuff. The best child care is in the home. The child being able to... Well, Amanda Stoker, could I just have a comment from you on that?
Alan, can I say this first about what Amanda has put before you tonight? And that is to say that just before the COVID-19 economic hit, we had record women's workforce participation in this country, and we had it without this absurd policy that's been proposed by Albanese. But it is true to say that a lot of studies show that the best start for children is in the home. And quite frankly, the policies we have in place, in my view personally, should provide real choice and real options for all families, so those that are prepared to make the sacrifice necessary for one parent to stay at home get some support in doing so, particularly if they're at the lower end of the income scale.
Amanda, the Labor Amanda, we've run out of time, but I'll just make one point to you, Amanda, and thank you for your time tonight and the clarity of your thinking. But I just must say that if you happen to be a mum and dad who stay at home to look after your kids, you get nothing. And those people are sort of subsidising those who are getting it. But look, we've run out of time. I will resume this discussion, though, next week. And Amanda, I hope we can talk to you again. Thank you for your time. In a beautiful part of the world, the two Amandas.